Distinguished Permanent Representative of Sri Lanka. Ambassador, you have the floor, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It is with great pleasure I would like to make a few remarks in support of your recent visit by the Peacebuilding Commission to South Sudan and in the backdrop of the discussion that we've heard this morning led by the Minister in its transition process. I wish to deliver a few lessons from our own experience through our own transition phase in Sri Lanka, post-conflict, which might be useful, I say, when setting strategies and priorities for the South Sudanese transition process. In our context, a few examples to learn from linking technical assistance and vocational training during the post-conflict phase through the disarmament, demobilization, and integration programs, I say, is useful. However, when implementing disarmament, demobilization, and reintegration programs, we found that it tended to sometimes re-victimize the victims, that certain post-conflict context-specific issues for the reason that they were not represented. In this regard, we had to carefully consider our DDR process, taking into account the problems and difficulties faced by female combatants upon return to their communities in the north, to the main capital cities, mainly focused its vocational training on agriculture and fishing communities. Now, we also adopted employment generation strategies that focused on these sectors, while placing available resources such as skills and education within the designing parameters of the DDR programs. Further, considering the psychological issues which may be incorporated by the victims in the social integration process, most of the strategies were designed to bring psychological reconciliation for female victims. Although there had been a critique stating that our rehabilitation program was, quote, designed to suit the Sri Lankan culture, considering the culture and traditions prevalent in whatever the context, suited to look forward to incorporate all post-conflict context issues is important. However, there still remains certain challenges. We continue to face those that pose obstacles to livelihood upliftment and empowerment of rehabilitated cadres. Hence, it is recommended to promote reconciliation through a victim-centric, community-based approach, even while incorporating a DDR program that suits the socio-cultural context of the Sudanese people. At the same time, certain victims were prevented from engaging with economic development and achieve reconciliation or legal justice, or sometimes both, due to the localized traditions and context-specific situations. Mr. Chairman, looking at the above perspectives, the application of retributive justice in the Sri Lankan context could have, we found, exacerbated tensions between communities, as mechanisms such as prosecutions would have provoked anger among people that felt much pride on the actions they were taking under the leadership of the non-state actors. Now, at the same time, the government security forces were also defending the sovereign nation. However, looking through the post-conflict context-specific lenses, Sri Lanka did divide the non-combatants into different categories in the treatment and the type of justice we were willing to dispense. So a unique feature that was visible was that it derived from connecting DDR and amnesties to the post-conflict context-specific issues and catered to their needs, providing creative solutions to the vexing challenges, I say, faced by female ex-combatants through the transitional justice process, and coordinate better funding plans for overseas funding agencies to look to bring individual justice. So looking at our own context in Sri Lanka, we can also highlight that the policy practitioners must be cautious of key questions relating to target recipient individual communities, the extent to which the vulnerable groups must be involved. The traditional communities in some of those in our countries are used to being part of that neighborhood communities, as communities are generally located within residential compounds. And finally, I would like to leave you with this thought, with also the thought that civil society played a pivotal role in partnership with the government, utilizing the expert knowledge to build DDR programs for the local communities by way of opening up access to justice in those areas of conflict. I like to note that transitional justice in our context looked at the post-conflict context specific issues among civilian women, female ex-combatants, and others. By and large, most challenges faced by these communities were connected with socio-cultural systems in which they lived. Applying transitional justice towards such a context became a challenging task in the post-conflict phase. This challenge only overcame by linking such transitional justice mechanisms with the DDR processes, and it enabled the vulnerable groups to benefit from that process. It is then, I would like to emphasize finally, that the transitional justice process that has been developed in another cultural context tends to cause tensions due to unique types of issues arising in each post-conflict context. In our context, post-conflict issues needed to deal expeditiously in order to build trust among people and bring in an inclusive effect to achieve individual justice for a long-term reconciliation and peace building. And that must be done in-house because we know best what is good for our communities. In the light of this, it is important, I say, that South Sudan context-specific issues are addressed to bring in individual justice for the needs of the different sections of the Sudanese society where victims are visible. It is only then, Minister and Mr. Chairman, sustainable peace building can achieve its highest goals. I thank you.
Thank you, distinguished member, President of Sri Lanka.